Right, okay, so welcome to the fourth Humanity Ascendant debrief session on the 6th of the 6th, a little bit delayed, so apologies for that, but real life gets in the way, as we well know. So today we're going to talk about Op4, we're going to do a review of the Relevation event, where we introduce a lot of new things. It's a very exciting event. We're going to talk about the medic class overview. We put that back last time to get the stricken in there because we had a lot of new stricken rules and background that we brought in, so we wanted to get everybody up to speed with that. And then we'll do the normal Q&A for anybody that comes online later, and a couple of people who got with us. So first of all, then we're going to a review of Op4. If you want to take over, Chris, and go to the next slide.
Yeah. So Op4, as you can see on the slide, took place 5th of October. We were still using the Woolly Edge Scout campsite for it at the time. I think this was our last event there, actually. Given what had happened previously at the last event, with them managing to kill the big bad of the local hive, it gave us a chance to introduce a brand new enemy. It was a lot of fun to come up with what is essentially an enemy bunker to thwart the players and their plans. Where are we? So we introduced a new hub for them at the same time. I was introducing a new enemy, a new forward base for them to occupy. That was all story driven. They had information about it, and the claiming the hub itself and everything there was a mission in and of itself. And we got to expand. We got to reveal some of the wider world background, and also got to introduce some delightful new horror elements, which were extremely funny and satisfying to play around with.
Definitely. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so it was the Rybeck research facility, which through previous information gathered, they got the details. They got the details about. They knew there was stuff there that they wanted to investigate. At the start of the event, as with the rest, the different classes will have been given their individual goals to aim for. It needed a lot of work doing to the facility itself in order to bring it back up and running. The encounter itself was a particular highlight. A lot of work and effort went into the bits that were on show there, and it
was basically a giant room of doom to start with until they'd fixed everything up, sort of thing, weren't it?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah. So
we had to break in through the damaged security doors, then repair the lift, which then took us down to the first underground level, I guess.
Yeah.
And then you'll see what it was like when we got there, but essentially there were 4 damaged systems that we had to identify and repair. I was a character for this event,
and it was full of toxic gas.
Yep. So we were fully masked up. Yeah.
Yeah. And fun and games. Okay. So so once I brought online, there were a big cache of information accessible, a lot of paper notes that were strewn around, and a computer system that could be accessed. Carry on, Chris.
Yeah, so not just a computer system, but this is the first event we included the VR, your VR equipment in to expand the level of immersion for the players. So once brought back online, as Longy said, there was plenty for them to be doing, lots of new information to be gathered. Later on, through information revealed that they gathered there, they encountered a psi creature, which was the first time they've encountered something really so powerful. And of course, we got to introduce the enemy bunker fortitude, which was fantastic fun to both build equipment and kit for, and to create the background about. So yeah, main plot hooks, as you can see, new hub for the players. It was always designed that it would be another base of operations for future events going forwards. The facility itself was of great benefit to the players and the needs of Bunker Ascendant. Fights with the bunker were very entertaining. It was the first time they've been on equal fighting ground with an enemy. The enemy bunker had all the same sorts of equipment as they did, down to the likes of the nanite healing boxes and the ammo replacement boxes and everything like that. Not only that, me and Duff worked long and hard, and we created a power armor Fizra. So to particularly show the military bent that this enemy bunker had. That was very interesting rolling that out, because it was just not something as tough as they'd encountered before. Yeah, and then the mini room of doom in the basement. So the facility itself was we were able, due to the amount of rooms available in the scout hut, we were able to make it a multi-layered building. Basically, there was a physrep lift, so you had to choose the floor you wanted to go to, and they were eventually able to repair this to go to the basement. It was a series of side rooms that we were able to convert to a full-on horror scene from everyone's worst nightmares, really, to do with scientific experimentation and all the dark and evil experiments that desperate people do.
It was an umbrella lab, basically is the feel that it had. When you went into it, that's what it felt like. A section, the whole building had that kind of vibe to it. So the VR testing, the VR part was like a personality and aptitude analysis machine that you participated in different challenges, and the machine identified personality traits, physical dexterity, endurance, all kinds of stuff. The idea being that they were looking for particular types of people to further their research. And once we'd accomplished enough to essentially say, there was enough subjects here, then that's when the final floor was accessed. Once I think there were four groups of people we had to basically put through the tests. Some people still have their test results. My character was absolutely not interested in going inside that machine. I did not want people accessing what I was thinking about doing at the time. So I didn't. A number of other people who probably shouldn't have gone in the machine went in the machine, and some interesting character development was born off of the reports that were handed out as a result of that, which was quite entertaining. But yeah, we went in there and it was horrible. They'd created like what would have been a damaged kind of sample storage thing with all kinds of green crap growing out of it and stuff for us to dig around in. And there was essentially a bunch of cells with, some had skeletons in, some had nothing in, some had bloodstains on the walls, some had clothes in them. And then we found the last room.
Well, it wasn't necessarily the last room, Dave. It was just the last room you explored.
Well, yeah, it was the last.
I mean, there were 100 rooms. You wouldn't have explored them, would you?
No.
Yeah. So yeah, the last room contained what was nicknamed afterwards the Witch.
Codename Witch.
Yeah, and basically terrified 6 people to death. A
very slightly built female character in her 20s in a white lab coat with different coloured irises with blood running down her face, essentially stood stationary inside a shower. So we pulled back the curtain and it was there. Nothing happened. We were like, oh shit, like talking in hushed voices. And then one of us raised our gun, because I think either I or Mehmet, I think probably me, had my torch on the end of my gun, and it was dark in there. There were no lights on. So I swung the gun round to look at it, and it took that as some kind of threat, and then just screamed at the top of its voice, and then just started killing people with its brain.
Yep.
Yeah, it was bad times.
Great description.
As you can tell, the GMs really enjoyed this part.
and we, the players, did not enjoy it at the time.
Right, so moving on then. So, some of the greats then, Chris, if you want to go through them. What went well with this event?
Yeah. So, where are we? So, all the toys in use to bring. There was loads of great props to make the actual research facility come to life. A lot of effort was put into various mechanical tasks that had to be done to neutralize them and make the hub actually habitable. The actual setup for the hub was also really good, in the fact that there was an access lift before lift transition from the outside to the inside, so there was a time delay before you could actually go out. So when there were camp attacks, there was a small delay until you could actually get outside to reinforce your comrades outside. Where are we? Yeah, the witch, the witch itself, and all that encounter was absolutely fantastic. As has been, we had lots of fun creating the story around it, and also all the props involved. The first time I dipped my hand into actual prop making as opposed to just kit and costume, which was great fun. Learned a few things there, and it was. As we said, one of the particular highlights of the weekend. Also, the look we went for Bunker Fortitude really paid off as well. We invested in appropriate heavy armor, military-looking kit, so that it actually looked like you were fighting a militaristic style bunker. And through that, we got to develop the character of them at the same time.
So just to play sorry, go on, Dave.
From a player's point of view, it was really good. It gave very clear definition of the difference between fighting stricken clans and then fighting against an organized military force, not only in look but in feel. In the game, that's when it was like, oh, like this is a whole different, the tactics that had been employed by the soldiers in previous fights where we were outgunning the enemy, all of a sudden those weren't viable anymore. Some of the soldiers had invested in learning some of the characters, soldiers included, had invested in learning how to use larger melee weapons so they could fight the stricken on their own terms. And all of a sudden they were just getting absolutely annihilated by people with assault rifles and sniper rifles, which they couldn't run towards. So it was a real shift towards a more balanced approach, I would say, from the military aspect of the game. And it looked cool too.
Mm-hmm. So I got a video as well of when the players first went into the Ryback facility, which I think shows off some of the cool things we were able to do. So just going to play that. To say everybody in here had to wear gas masks because it was a toxic thingy. Obviously got smoke, everything going off. All them notes that's been held by one of the players, they were all scattered around the room. That there were a lot of plot regarding the Ryback facility. Is the repairs that the engineers are doing in real time to get the facility up and running. Just an awful lot going on in there. I think you get to see the computer system in the background as well that runs the facility. In a minute. Yeah, computers over there that runs the facility. So yeah, just a really fun sort of introduction to the Ryback facility. A lot of sort of atmosphere.
And for those people who spotted it, the silver case with the big radiation symbol on the back, that wasn't a prop. That wasn't a GM created prop. That was the first time that players saw an in-character player driven development within the game. Both myself and Mehmet, who was on the call, our characters had taken apart elements of Hive Apollo that we'd encountered previously, and we had created the first Bunker Ascendant railgun technology. So that is essentially a Ghostbusters power pack, or if you're familiar with Stargate, it's a Naquita generator strapped to my back. And yes, my character can now no longer have children. And that essentially fueled a railgun, the first new player created kind of offensive technology. So that was the birth of the railgun. This event was where we were testing the prototype. It mostly went to plan. No one died. Well, the bad guys died. None of us did.
Yeah. So on the not so greats then, we spent a lot of time recreating the Ryback facility encounter for Friday night, and then for various reasons made it accessible for only those with gas masks. The problem there was a lot of the players didn't have gas masks, and it was throwing it down with rain outside, and we'd not given much for or anything at all really towards the back end of it for those players to do outside. So we ended up with sort of half the players had an amazing experience, and it truly was amazing inside the building. And then the other half of the players, they were basically like stood outside in the rain waiting for a bus for half an hour, 3/4 of an hour, which I think in terms of greats and not so greats, this is the biggest disparity we've had in an event so far, where you've had something so good yet so bad at the same time. I would say the good thing is that obviously we've learned from this. We had a lot of player feedback about it, and obviously it's something we will never do again, that's for sure. What we want is more from the greats and less from the not so greats in this type of thing. So make sure that when we do these really good set pieces and really cool props and that players have sort of an equal level of access to it. And if they don't want to access that content, they've got something else to be doing at the same time. And this event drove a lot of how we plan the events afterwards, the couple of events afterwards. So it brought us a long way in a short space of time. So yeah, as it says there, not our finest hour, unfortunately, but we learnt a lot from it. So Chris, you got to add to that?
No, not really. It's just echo your thoughts. Both such a highlight and such a low point at the same time.
Yeah. So quick summary of what the players did then. So they repaired and took over the Ryback facility, accessing its database of secret research. The players actually renamed the facility afterwards. It's now known as Fort Leon. So if you hear Fort Leon talked about, they're actually talking about the Ryback facility. Fought off a vicious fortitude assault and counter-assaulted and destroyed a forward operating base. Undertook careful repairs to facility power and support systems using science and medicine whilst under attack, and used VR candidate testing to access the research labs and release the witch. They did have the opportunity to chase the witch down because she did escape initially, because there were nothing the 6 players at Encounter were in no fit state to do anything about her, both mentally or physically, when she was first encountered. So she legged it into the night, and the players did try and hunt her down on the Sunday, but weren't successful at that point, and almost suffered quite a few player deaths due to mine shenanigans and things like that. But they did all survive, but she did escape, and that was a story for a later event. Because as always, in Humanity Ascendant, it's all about failure and success. It's all just about the story and bringing the story along. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Dave to take us through the medic class.
Yeah, so medics, as in pretty much every other game, are really important in Humanity Ascendant, but they're not what you would typically refer to. So if you've played any fantasy LARPs like Lorien Trust or Empire or Fools and Heroes, they are not alchemists and Vlaiborians and physicians. This character class is much more in depth than that, and far more important, I would say, to the game from a balance point of view. Very rare is it that some people go, do you know what, we don't want a medic on our mission, you all stay back. That just never, those words have never been issued ever at Humanity Ascendant. We'll get onto the fact that anyone can do basic healing stuff through uses of the med boxes and the nanite patches. Lee's going to talk about that after this. But there are a few key things that make medics really, really different from that point of view. There are 3 types of medic, and they are the field medic, who, if you think of those as kind of your first responder, paramedic, military kind of field doctors, who go out with whose job is to go out with teams of soldiers into the field, and their skills revolve around supporting live combat scenarios. Then you have the opposite to that, which is the doctor. So these are more your surgeons and kind of researchers. So these are the people that are, you know, capable of, in fact, you can go as far as a doctor, you can bring people back from the dead, which is pretty crazy. You can reattach limbs, you can perform surgery on people, you can perform all manner of research. You're more efficient at the research part of it than necessarily a field medic would be. And then lastly, you've got the class which is completely the opposite of both of those, which is the augment specialist. And these are kind of like your, if you imagine they're like your cyber docs from many kind of near future or cyber, you know, kind of cyberpunk style things. They have the ability to enhance and modify the human physique, whether that's through permanent modifications or temporary enhancements. Most of them involve some form of nanite infusion into the body to make it do things that it wouldn't normally do or wouldn't normally be able to do. So, you know, they can enhance your physical abilities and your mental abilities. So it's not just about, you know, giving you more hit points and you know, making you run faster. It's also to do with, you know, mental acuity and being able to learn things and process stuff a lot faster. So quite three very distinct parts to the same class. They, if you want to move on to the next slide. So the next slide talks about the key skills.
Starting skills, isn't it?
There we go. Yeah. So so MedPad, again, the same as pretty much every class except for soldiers, I would say, is an almost, you know, compulsory starting skill. It gives you access to pretty much all of the QR codes relevant to your class, even if you can't necessarily use them or you don't have the skills to remedy the problem or whatever it is. It will at least allow you to understand what the situation is with regard to what's something that you found that pertains to medical science. And crucially, it also lets you refuel the nanite distribution units, both. You have the skills to fill up both. Your taught and your pad gives you access to fill both of those. Programmable nanites. This is awesome. So nanite patches, if you've been and looked through the player's guide or the downloads, you'll see what a nanite patch looks like. Tiny piece of colored paper with a code on it and then instructions for use and which type it is there. And what the medics can do is they can turn a type of patch. So say, for example, they can turn a healing patch into something that will remove disease, or a healing patch into something that will remove radiation. They can basically, on the fly, use their med pad to essentially rewrite a patch into a different type, which the amount of times that saved people or allowed us to progress a scenario is, for me, that is the best skill that medics have. I'm very mad that I don't get to do it as an engineer. I'm not going to lie.
So basically, like anybody can spend loads and loads of money stacking up on all the 5, 6, 7 different types of medipatches like toxin removal, rad removal, etc. But with a program on nanites, all you need is just a massive stack of the basic med patch, and you can program that to any of the others. As long as you've bought the programs, you can do a rad patch for the same cost as a med patch, and you know, you can do anything you need to do in the field as long as you've still got a stack of them red patches left, which is the flexibility and cost savings are massive.
Yeah, it's massive. It is absolutely awesome. Radiologist. So radiation, it's around all the time in the surface world. We generally speaking know where the radiated areas are. Unfortunately, as you can imagine, the heavily irradiated areas is often where the good stuff is, because it hasn't already been looted. Because if you go in there, you die of radiation. So quite often we find ourselves, much like when we were traveling between the Riebeck Institute or Fort Leon, and we were heading towards the institute from the next event, which is the Dahl Institute. That was through an irradiated area. So as the players traveled there, if you didn't have some form of protection, then you suffered from radiation by the time you got there. So most of us took the plunge and we wore full MBC suits, so it looked like an episode from post-apocalyptic Breaking Bad. There are some pictures of that, and I'll tell you what, wearing those in the sun is insane. It is insane. There is another person on this call who can probably tell a very different story about wearing those suits, but I'll leave that to him. So generally speaking, we know when we're going to be irradiated and we can take measures to avoid it. However, if you do get irradiated, it is very bad for your character. And getting up to level 2 of radiation is really bad for your character. You can die very quickly at that point. Prolonged exposure to high levels of radiation is, as you can imagine, very dangerous for humans. I mean, I'm sure most people have watched Chernobyl by this point, and if you haven't, I would recommend it, because it gives you a very good crash course on why you don't hang around in irradiated zones. So yes, so the ability to very quickly use a single patch. So for example, if you've only got healing patches, someone gets really badly irradiated, you could potentially reprogram it and immediately remove 2 levels of radiation, which is awesome. And again, firearms training, for me, this game's all about shooting people with guns. So I would recommend almost every character takes at least that, not necessarily as a starting skill potentially for medics, but at some point you're probably going to want a gun. Not as we've discussed about invulnerability and shock timers in the past. It's not about the amount of damage you can do with a gun. It's the fact that if you shoot someone, they can't shoot you back. And that cannot be underestimated. If some dude's got a sniper rifle shooting people for 20 points of damage a go, and you shoot him with your 2 damage pistol, you can't shoot anyone with that sniper rifle for 3 seconds. So that can save as many lives as the med patches. And then lastly, medical project. Again, this is primarily a downtime skill, but it's sometimes sometimes what is primarily a downtime skill can come up in real time, depending on how the missions have been written.
We do always try to get some uptime projects in there in the hub for things to do on an evening and things like that. So
we've done all kinds of stuff. We've dug through poop. We've cracked a rock open. What else have we done? What did we do, Mem?
The gas chamber thing with the hands.
Yeah, the crazy, like the proper kind of the scene from The Rock when the scene from The Rock when Nick Cage has got his hands through the big gloves in the big box thing trying to disarm stuff. That again, that is not as much fun as it looks. Those gloves get pretty warm pretty quick. So that was kind of fun. We've done, we had to rebuild sound files and stuff. There's been all kinds of stuff that gets done in uptime. But again, a useful skill in the long run for any medic that wants to be in charge of doing any. If you just want to get involved in other people's research projects, and trust me, there are millions that are waiting to. There's a queue that's about as tall as I am of stuff that wants to be researched. So you could just get involved in other people's research and take it that way. Or if you want to run your own projects, then that's a skill for you. Next.
Couple of builds next.
Yeah, so again, these are just suggestions, and by no means, pick one of these to start with. You can do whatever you like with your starting points. This is quite a good one for people who want to go out on missions and be both useful and not die to the first guy who starts shooting at you. Gets you out there, gives you the skills to have, a pistol, an SMG, or an assault rifle of your choice. Basically, you just have to buy it. The light armor makes a big difference. If you're getting shot at by someone who's, for example, who's doing 4 damage a shot, it means it will require someone to hit you 4 times rather than 3 times to take you down. So it does. 5 doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're fighting against average bods, it really does. It means you won't get one shot by sniper rifles too, because that sucks. I know. And yeah, you're there to help out. You can, run the med box. You can refill the med box live on mission if you take a particular heavy pounding and use it a lot in a fight. It's very handy. This is just like multi-purpose. This is every character's best friend. If you take both of these skills, people will take you on mission and hide you behind other people. It's what will happen. Like I said, being able to reprogram the nanites is a critical skill. But you don't get a gun at your first event, which, depending on what you're coming along to do, has pluses and minuses. But you will be, you'll be in high demand, and you will find people will want to get your character on missions with them. the thing to mention about programmable nanites is the skill is 10 points, but then you need to buy the recipe or the program that loads into your pad to be able to change to each type of pad. So you'd have to but then again, you show up on the first night and go, I've got this skill, but I didn't have enough money to buy any of the recipes. Sure as shit, no, someone's going to buy them for you. that happens pretty regularly when it comes to medics. So yeah, something to bear in mind, definitely. Or if you're playing a set of group characters, again, you know, there's a fair few people that start as groups of players, and you tend to find that the wealth gets distributed around to be able to support that type of skill.
And we all like that. If you're struggling for something which you think you really need, generally, if you've not got any sort of anybody you can approach, talk to the bureaucrats. They're very good at organising stuff like that as well. Like Jane's online at the moment. Jane's very good at sorting stuff like that. Tristan, equally, he'll help out. Yeah, any of the bureaucrats will sort of, the ones that are certainly in play at the moment will tend to help the new players.
And the other medics too.
And the other medics, obviously, yeah.
Yeah, and anyone who looks like, if someone looks like they've got some swanky looking kit, just go ask them for some cash to help with healing. They'll probably fork some off.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Jane's a character that doesn't carry a gun. She doesn't have one. So yeah, pretty much all I've seen Jane spend thousands of credits on a mission, or not on a mission, at an event, just providing people with the stuff they need. So definitely. Yeah. This one is a more kind of get involved in the plot kind of build. So world weary means that if you are scanning things that are potentially dangerous, like wild animals or poisonous plants, or there's a whole bunch of things that you can scan out there in the wilderness that might just decide they're going to try and kill you. Then world weary protects you against the entry level things that will try and kill you.
It's quite a regular way of gaining levels of radiation as well. If you haven't got world weary, a lot of the objects that you encounter, both biological and static, and non-biological, will be irradiated and offer up a level of radiation. So world weary just blocks that from the offset.
I have that skill because I'm always mucking about with stuff. And then med project. So that again will let you lead the project. If it was me and I was playing this one, I would maybe not necessarily have med project, and I would potentially take light armor instead, just to give you that increased survivability on the mission itself. But again, so you could have light armor, or you can have weapons training, and then take world weary and med pad. Like world weary for me is really, it is a very good skill. I think I took it from the go. I think I went some of the engineer skills I have to get world weary as a starting character. Didn't help me because someone was like, oh yeah, these trees drop stuff on your head. Just put this above your head. Cool. No, this is a different tree and it emits poisonous gas. So that didn't work very well. But yeah, those are the three suggested. Those are the kind of rough starting medics you would love.
I think the thing with medics is because of the cost of the two main skills, the Medipad and the programmable nanites, they're sort of like signature skills. The builds are not as flexible, I would say, as the other classes to start with. But that second, once you finish your first event, that next sort of 20 XP that you get, that's where you really sort of come into your own and go your own way sort of thing with it. So I think, like Dave's intimated, unless you really don't want a gun, I would always recommend that you start with the firearm skill and medpad, and then just decide whether you're going to take world weary or the rad removal or light armor or medical project or whichever, to fill it up. But it's that next 20 where you sort of like got your big decision on which way you're going to go with it. So yeah, it's like I say, it's just I think it's just a necessity of how powerful those skills are that drives the cost, which drives a little bit of inflexibility when you first start. But yeah, I say it flies past, it really does. Okay, we've got a medic online. We've got Beck on, so I don't know if you want to add out to that, Beck, your experiences with medic.
Well, I played the medic with the no weapon, no armor, and reprogrammable nanites, and it was, yeah, like Dave said, you when you go on the mission, people do look after you, and you are necessary. And I found it was really fun. It was really inclusive. But yeah, it was healing and programs was all I pretty much blew all my money on. So yeah, because I played a doctor.
Yeah, and you've been more about the surgeon and research side of things, haven't you, Beck, as you've progressed, rather than the field medic side?
Yeah, absolutely. Field running around on a battlefield isn't really my forte. So it was more researching, because I think the best time I ever had at HASC was mentioned last session, where I worked with scientists to zoom in on to look at nanite barcodes to try and fix this disease. And I think that was one of the most immersive times I've had at HASC. Yeah,
so doing the
researching
2,000 times magnification or whatever it were on the cell.
That's right. Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
that was really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a giant game of Where's Wally.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was really fun. But then with the medic as well, you get your hero moments. I think I had one where I was out with the engineers with the med box, and it was a really hard fight, and we got screwed over and shit happened. Sorry if I'm not allowed to swear.
No, fine.
Yeah, shit happened, but yeah, hero moments. You're going to get those as a medic as well.
Definitely. Okay, cool. So moving on then. So talking about these hero moments, how do you stop people dying in Humanity Ascendant? So let's talk about healing then. So two main sources of injury in Humanity Ascendant. One is firearms, and the other is melee, or what we call archaic range. So things like bows, crossbows, and stuff that's used traditional LARP ammunition. I'll be honest, we've not used them at all yet. They're in the system, but we haven't used them. We reserve the right to use them. Players are allowed to use them if they get the right skills, etc. But I'll be completely honest, a LARP bow in Humanity Ascendant is borderline useless in terms of practicality. It really is. It is not a weapon that you are going to win fights with, or probably even influence fight with. It's there to fulfill the sort of rules rather than being a practical weapon. So firearms then. So these are the actual laser tag equipment. So they're only healable with the NDU. So to heal somebody that's been hit with firearms that's down on the floor, you have to point it towards them, hold the button down for 5 seconds. It makes a flash. Their headband will flash up, and then they're back on the feet. It wakes them up as well. So even if they're unconscious, straight back up on the feet. There's no delay. You don't have to wake them up or anything like you do in the fantasy system. The nanites do all of that for you, so it's really fast. If you haven't got access to an NDU and your comrade is laid at the side of you bleeding out, and they're getting pretty low on their death count, you know they've been down there a couple of minutes or whatever, you can always throw a med patch at them, deploy a med patch on them. Anybody can do that. You don't need skills for that. So you just hold the med patch over on the red med patch, tear it, and that will suspend their count wherever they are on that count. So if they're still conscious but screaming and shouting for help, they're in their sort of wounded condition, it will hold them at wounded. They won't go unconscious. But they still can't use weapons or anything like that. And if anybody comes over and coup de grace them, it'll put them on the death count. But it does suspend that count, whether they're conscious or unconscious. But eventually they're going to need an NDU to get them back up. And this is one of the reasons why Dave was talking about earlier, why the fights against the Stricken early doors was so one-sided, because the Stricken, some of them have got guns, not many. That number does seem to be increasing for plot reasons. But they engage in a firefight and they can't deal with their wounded, whereas the bunkers, both Ascendant and Fortitude, are able to get people straight back on the feet with this nanite technology, and that's why the bunkers are able to sweep into the stricken lands and sort of, even though they're vastly outnumbered, really sort of take the fight to the stricken if they wish to, and be so dominant, and the likes of Rays, etc., all recognise that, and that's why there's an alliance now. It's quite obvious that the bunkers aren't to be trifled with. So the other type of damage is if you're struck with melee weapons, and the melee weapon takes you down to 0 hits. So every human's got 1 hit as default. If you put light armor on you, you get an extra hit. You get heavy armor, you get 2 extra hits. Some of the skills get hits as well. The hits are global, so it doesn't matter where you get hit. It doesn't matter whether they hit you on the armor or off it. We just count as a global hit system for simplicity. But if you're taking down 0 hits, you're then down, wounded, 30 seconds, unless somebody like hits you again and knocks you straight unconscious. But you're on your 30 seconds calling about asking for help. You can't use your weapon, you can't use healing patches, but you can use your radio, you can shout for help. And again, same thing happens there. After 30 seconds, you go unconscious, 5 minutes, and then you die. However, the difference here is a med patch does heal you. So you're straight back on your feet if you're med patched from a melee wound. It's a much less critical wound, and the med patch is able to sort that out for you. So as I've said, when you're wounded from either source, it's the same. So in 30 seconds of wounded status, you can crawl around and shout for help. You can't use weapons or healing equipment, you're in too much pain. And then you've got a 5-minute period of critical status. These counts you have to do yourself. The equipment doesn't do it for you or anything like that. And once you time out on the 5 minutes, you will die. Although, as Dave mentioned earlier, there is still a remote possibility of being saved by the use of the case, vac, and revive skills. So revive skill, if you've got a surgeon on site, they can use the revive skill there and then. If you haven't got a surgeon on site, the field medics can have a skill called case vac, which allows them to prepare your injured person, so they're able to be revived at a much later time. So I think revive has something like a 30-minute timer on it, whereas case vac, I think it's more like 24 hours from memory, but that's all in rule book. So moving on then, so the NDU itself. So as mentioned earlier, anyone can use the NDU to heal with, and this is one thing that Beck used to do. When she's out on missions, she might do the topping up. Whenever it needs topping up, she'll top it up. But if she's not topping it up, she'll give it to one of the soldiers or one of the engineers that's also got an ammo pack or something like that. So enable them to move forward with the actual healing point to the front line. But Beck's there in reserve. If anything goes really wrong, if everybody gets irradiated or a mass sort of really hard hit, you've got the actual medic waiting in the wings to go in and sort it out. So as I said, you just press the button and everyone in range will be healed. You can heal multiple people with it to get some better efficiency of the use of the nanites, and the players suss out quite early on, and that's it's a valid tactic. No issue with doing that. The trick comes though when the NDU runs out. So it's got about 15 charges in it. Some skills can increase that, some engineer modifications can increase that number. But once you're getting low on that count, you're going to want to recharge it. And there's 2 ways to do that. One is to manually reload it. And the way you do that is you take your little vial of liquid out that's got your nanites in it. You call for a GM. The GM comes and re-energizes your device for you. And then you pour the liquid away to obviously show that that's being used and you're not sort of reusing it again later on by accident. That can take a few minutes, so it's advisable that you don't let your NDU get low in charges unless you've got method 2 available, which is the use of a zapper. Zapper is a tiny gun about that big. It's really, really small. What that allows you to do is you load your liquid into the back of the zapper instead, and you zap the NDU with it, and it recharges it instantly, which is obviously really, really useful, which means you can get better efficient use of your charges all the way down to sort of 1 or 0, and you can recharge it in a firefight confidently and quickly. So you're not worried about you don't have to think about sacrificing 3 or 4 charges before you go into a fight. You can run it right down to 0 if that's your preference. So zapper's a piece of equipment that can be bought. And it's just something that really helps sort of expedient the whole process. And most medics and some engineers will generally pick one of those up once they've got a bit of funding behind them. So other sources of harm then. So 3 main other sources of harm is radiation, toxins, and infections. So radiation is the one you come across most. It's encountered by QR codes, red smoke, or gem calls. As Dave said earlier, we might have an entire mission where it's going through a radiation zone, and you might be taking a level of radiation every 15 minutes unless you've got protection. That protection depends on the type of radiation, but So alpha radiation, a gas mask protects you, or there's a patch that protects you for an amount of time. Beta radiation, you have to have a full bodysuit on, or the patch protects you. Gamma radiation cannot be protected from it all. You will take the damage from it. You will take the radiation levels no matter what. There is no protection from it. All you can do is take the radiation, then reduce it afterwards. But that sort of radiation is restricted to like being inside nuclear reactors and things like that. It's really, really sort of hardcore stuff. And it would probably be encountered in some kind of plot set piece or something like that.
I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure as players we've yet to encounter anything above alpha.
Yes, bear in mind that this distinction was made relatively recently anyway, weren't it, if you remember, Dave?
Oh yeah, that's
we had
true.
A bit of a revision on it. I think it was not last event before. So yeah, it's not the three different levels, the three different types haven't really taken effect in game yet. It's nearly always been alpha, but that will remain to be the case. Alpha will continue to be the one that you encounter more than anything, but you will see some more beta, but gamma will be quite rare because it is, as I said, it is quite dangerous. So there's 3 levels of radiation, and they can accumulate over time. So if you're at level 0, you take 1 level, it takes you to level 1. You stay at level 1. You can stay at that. It's not the worst thing in the world. All that happens is if you have something healed with a med patch, it takes 2 med patches rather than 1 to heal it. To heal a normal wound while you're irradiated, because radiation is messing with the nanites. But if you at 1 and take another leg to 2, 2 is like you're down, coughing and spluttering. You're basically in a wounded stabilized status. And then if you take another level while you're at 2, you're at 3, and at that point you're straight into your death count, and that's where you've got some real problems. And the only way to stop that death count is to bring that rad level down. Which when we start, we go back to the medics, we start talking about if somebody hasn't got one of them patches and you're at rad level 3, you're going to die unless somebody's got programmable nanites, which again, it's to that flexibility. So rule of thumb is never go out on a mission without rad patches and or access to programmable nanites, because radiation can really, it sounds somewhat like not dangerous, but it can really take you, if you're not prepared for it, it's something that creeps up on you. Okay. So toxin, encountered via QR codes. I must admit on this one, this is the main sort of place you'll encounter it. Is on the QR codes, like as Dave said earlier, like venomous plants, traps, things like that. Green smoke. If you use smoke grenades, the green. If you're in that smoke, that will trigger the effect. And certain weapons can be coated with toxin as well. Or it can be by other GM calls, but again, they're very rare because GM calls as a whole are very rare. And these take you immediately to your critical state, straight onto your 5-minute death count. And the only way to stop that is to cure the toxin via toxin patches, programmable nanites, or the stricken also have a way of doing it as well. So yeah, that's toxin. Then infection, all the same rules as toxin really. QR codes, yellow smoke, certain weapons, or certain creatures, if you touch certain creatures or they touch you. Takes you immediately to stabilized state, but you may fire from the hip, and it's passed on by touch. It's healed by infection removal patches, programmable patches, or again, the stricken have ways to deal with it. And just a note on this, if you use a patch on an infected person, you don't actually have to touch the patch on a person, or you touch the person, or when you're applying a patch, it's just close rather than touching. So you don't catch it by using a patch on somebody, because that'd be a bit daft. And that's the healing system. There is a bit more to it in games. Certain other things can happen. Plot things where nanite's not working, all kinds of funky things we've had over the last few events. But generally, everything you need to know is in those in that last sort of 10-15 minutes. So on to any questions from anybody, and I've got the chat open, so if anybody puts on the chat, I will see it. Or anything anybody wants to add about Op4 or medics in general, or anything in general at all, really.
You're making me start to regret retiring.
Oh dear. You're on mute, Dave.
I was saying, you haven't actually technically gone to an event yet, so you could unretire if you are genuinely thinking about it. Your other character's not going to go anywhere, is she?
No, that's true, but we'll see. I'll think about it.
The good news is I think we have got 2 or 3 medics coming in, so there is replacements coming along. So
okay, that's good to know.
You're leaving a hole, but it's not a hole that's not getting filled in some way. Or
that's good. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, but by all means, if you want to reconsider, there's definitely a place for you in your medic role.
Oh, I'll chat to you, Longy.
Yeah.
I've had some ideas, but we'll chat if that's okay.
I think the other thing is probably worth talking about. I didn't really mention it while we were going through the op stuff, but the introduction of the witch is sort of one of the things that's sort of driven the plot massively forward. And when we always talk about the plot, but there's the plot and then there's the plot, which is the entire plot for the background of the game, which, as Dave said previously, I keep it quite close to my chest, a lot of it. But it's the sort of the whole plot to the whole background of the game. And the idea of Humanity Ascendant is that eventually you could possibly win the game, you could possibly solve the plot, but we haven't put a time scale on that, we haven't put anything on that. It's going to be an organic move towards that if it does eventually happen. But my thoughts is it would take many years if it does get resolved. But the sort of the witch and what she represents sort of really got that ball rolling, and some of the players are heavily invested in that now, finding that as much as they can about that. Mehmet, for instance, is sort of really driving forward on that side of thing. Tristan's heavily involved in it. Dave's involved from an engineering point of view, and I think the council's all sort of got an idea of what's going off as well. So I think everybody's starting to get a handle on what's going on behind the curtain of the sort of the forefront. You've got the hives, you've got Bunker Fortitude, you've got the Stricken, you've got all those interactions with those factions, but then behind that there's something else entirely different going on, and the players are starting to get a real taste of what that's all about now and starting to look into it more, and I think this is one of the key things for me in having the story driven. It's all about the story and driving forward and creating the stories. Why we have the op reviews, why there's a lot of the players like reports, a lot of information that players can impart to each other, new players, old players, and it all really pushes along to that. Just by the time we get to the end of this, or a few more years down the line, you can look back and just say, look at all this, what we did, and it all sort of rolls together to create this story that we've all experienced together, and we've all been the heroes. So yeah, sorry, a bit of a rant there. So any more questions?
I say, Luke, have you got any questions, being as you're the one who's looking to potentially play a medic?
I'm going to definitely re-watch this video and just let everything be absorbed. There's lots to remember.
There is a lot, yeah. There's a lot.
No, it all sounds very interesting. And your event you were talking about sounded fantastic. It really did sound great.
It was mental. There was just, every event has standout moments, but for me, like Lee said, that had both the best and worst probably bits that Humanity Ascendant has seen from a game point of view, for sure. But yeah, it is. Yeah, every event has something crazy. Ask when you come to the event. Ask about what happened last time we went on the surface. There'll be some stories.
Yeah,
the witch was well scary. Just saying.
It's good that nobody ever disagrees with that statement either. Nobody ever says, "No, sure, push over. It didn't scare me at all." Nobody ever says that.
Since that encounter, my character has not gone underground.
Nice. Yeah, it's all about farming, it says. Yeah, we've even got his own farming simulator going, haven't we? with the colony sits on the surface, the 500. So yeah, so currently they're developing, because of what happened with the engineers and the terrorist plot, where a third of the bunker got disabled. You got 500 colonists on the surface. So Jane and Alex in particular do a load of work with those surface dwellers to make sure that they can survive and thrive. And like it all goes back into the politics of, should we be sort of emptying the bunker onto the surface and bringing the the surface back to life, or should we be staying in the bunker for protection? There's all them sorts of discussions goes on. It's yeah, it's a very interesting world at the moment that the bunker inhabitants are living in. Okay. Anyone for any more? No. Good. Okay. Well, we're more or less bang on time as well, so spot on. Can't really argue with that. So just want to say thanks for people that have turned up and shared their experiences and asked a few questions, and we will pick up again hopefully in a couple of weeks' time. Hopefully there won't be any delays this time with the next instalment, which I think from memory is bureaucrats next. Can't remember, but yeah, I think it's bureaucrats. But yeah, so another 2 of these to go, and then we'll be ramping up to the event.
Yeah, it's exciting times.
Definitely. Right, thank you very much all.
Cool.
Cheers, man.